Hello, welcome back to the Three Arcs channel. This is David, and today I'm going to talk about the leadership of the Temple of Elemental. Lately, I wrote this article on the Greater Temple and the 4 Elemental Temples and their minions below them. So that way, when you run an epic version of the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign, you know what all the leaders are doing. Their personalities, their motivation, their aims and goals. So when your players are encountering different raiding parties throughout their campaign, you know who's pulling the strings. And as a dungeon master, you'll know the command structure. That way, when the players start peeling back that layers of the onion to find out what's going on, you'll be able to provide that to the players in a logical manner so they can track the plots and activities of the temple agents in the campaign. Real quick, again, like every video, this version of the Temple of Elemental Evil is a few different things. First off, I treat this as the epic campaign version of this module, not just running the module from the pages, which is what a lot of dungeon masters did throughout the years. They just run them through the T1, Village of Hamlet, get to the Moat House, tackle Lareth, survive or not, might get away. Then they track all the clues down to Nolb, and then they find out that the Temple of Elemental Evil is on the rise again when they investigate the ruins. And then they go to a dungeon slog, starting at the upper ruins and then diving into the 4 levels of the dungeon and killing the big bad guys at the end. In fact, they did make a video game about that, and pretty much you're playing it as most DMs would run it. But this is the epic version of the campaign, which means it's pretty much like Game of Thrones meets Temple of Elemental Evil. It's the entire campaign area, the world itself, within like 500 square miles. The epic version is more like an open sandbox where all the towns, all the cities, the locations, geographic areas like the Gnarly Forest, the Cron Hills, and the surrounding areas, as far as the Wild Coast and the Lortmill Mountains, and Selene, the Fey Kingdom of the Elves to the south. So you have Hamlet with the Moat House, one outpost outlined in the module for the Temple of Elemental Evil. This outpost is run by Lareth the Beautiful, who reports to the Greater Temple. That has nothing to do with the 4 lesser temples. And Gary Gygax in the module specifically stated, and in interviews since then, that there's meant to be more. Each of the elemental temples have outposts out there as well. They're focusing on the rise of the Temple of Elemental Evil again. And they need supplies, they need slaves, coin, assistance, political leverage in the cities like the city of Rivalry and divers. They're heavily recruiting, like a half a dozen to a dozen characters and monsters a week coming through Nolb into the temple. All the supplies, coin, and slaves are coming into the temple. The slaves are for multiple reasons: recruitment, manual labor, undead fodder, and sacrifices to the elemental nodes in honor of the Elder Elemental God. The first thing I want to clarify, I'm using canon from Orth's journal and the interviews with Gary Gygax and Joseph Bloch's investigation throughout the years, his research, and finding out what Gygax meant the module to be before Frank Mencher took over. In one of his interviews, Gary did admit that he did not give Frank all the notes for several reasons, and one is because it would make the module too big. You can't publish a 1,000-page module, especially in the 80s. And he did admit that, yes, originally Loth was the one involved pulling strings with Uis, and the Elder Elemental God was supposed to be in the Temple of Elemental Evil. So what Joseph did was he created a new module called the 5th level beneath the Temple of Elemental Evil, where the Elder Elemental God is. Zuggtmoy is still on the 3rd level, but down on the 5th level, and on the 4th level is the Greater Temple. On the 5th level is where the Elder Elemental God is. Joseph Bloch did great work linking the Temple of Elemental Evil with the G series, into the D, into the Q1, and then he also published the Q2 module, which is the last piece of the puzzle at the end of this epic campaign. And that's what I'm supporting in my website at worldanvil.com. All the articles I write on World Anvil is public-facing, follow the Wizards of the Coast fan content policy so everybody and anybody can use it in their campaign. All my maps, my NPCs, the locations, the cities, the articles I write, everything's there. But I also create a PDF version bundled together for the Dungeon Masters Guild, which I sell there as a module format. So far I have 3, which is the side quest for the Village of Hamlet, the Village of Shirnob, and also the village of Ostberg on the southern border. That way, you can actually run your campaign more of a sandbox, where you do not just adventure around the village of Hamlet and Nulb, but it opens up more possibilities of your players to explore the world around them and engage into the world of Greyhawk through these different towns, which are only 10 to 20 miles away. So it keeps the focus of the campaign in a relatively small area. And I've actually created each town through the Gnarly Forest, to the Viscounty of Verberbach and elsewhere, where these players could possibly come from as backgrounds. And what's great about having a background place location with an article and all NPCs and a full organizational structure there is the players can lean on that and leverage that in their campaign. Not only do they come from a real place and they know real people like NPCs there that they're associated with, but they can go back there for information, for training, for equipment, for spells, for advice, or to report to the authorities. For example, let's say the player is a cleric of St. Cuthbert. He reports to Bishop Hoffern in the city of Verberbach of his investigation, of his adventure and investigation into the Temple of Elemental Evil, what's behind the bandits. So back to the main theme of the campaign. At the beginning of the campaign, you have bandits. The bandits are on the rise in the Viscounty. They're raiding up and down the merchant roads. And for some reason, there's a big rise in activity, and people are starting to get upset about it, and they want to find out who's behind all this. That's why Otis and Kenan Day is in Nulb disguised to find out what's going on behind there, because everybody knows that Nulb is a hive of scum and villainy, which is basically a bunch of pirates and bandits. Because you have pirates sailing up and down the rivers like the Velvediver River and Run, and all the way out to the Wild Coast, pirating merchant ships along the way, and they're taking this loot and slaves to Nulb. And then from there, nobody knows yet, it's going into the Temple of Elemental Evil. That's what the players got to figure out. Also, there's bandit gangs out there. Larth has his bandit gang, and they're out there raiding away from the moat house, so they're trying to keep this low-key, far away from the moat house or Nulb or the actual Temple of Elemental Evil, so that way they don't tip off the good guys. Because if the good guys find out, like the Circle of Eight or something, they'll come down and stop anybody involved with the Temple of Elemental Evil, and it'll be over right then and there. So they need time. And they're also collaborating with other organizations in the area. I have the Knoll King in the Knoll Fort in the Lortmill Mountains. That's where those Knolls came from in Moat House. Also, within the Temple of Elemental Evil, you'll see they have Knoll forces in the keyed original module. They're working with orcs, like the Blackthorn orcs from the East Gnarly, and setting war bands to help them raid and pillage. And so they're doing this in a way to not tip off the authorities. It's the actual Temple of Elemental Evil that's on the rise again. I'd like to mention that I try to stick to canon as much as possible. The goal is to expand, as Gary intended. He said that in the module. He expects the Dungeon Master, since it's not 1,000 pages, he can't put his campaign published in the module. He expects the Dungeon Master to flush out Nulb, the surrounding area, the other temple outpost out there, and do all this work. It's a lot of work to run this module. You can't just run it from the pages. It'll end up being flat dungeon slog. It won't be as good as it should be. Okay, so the first thing the first thing we have to tackle to help a dungeon master understand this whole thing, get a solid grasp of the campaign, is to look at the leadership of the Temple of Elemental Evil and their activities and relationships. So let's go ahead and take a look at that article right now. So this article, there's Colbert. He's in the T1 module of the Village of Hamlet at the Inn of the Welcome Wentz, and you can recruit him into your group. He's a lot of fun. So basically, this article right here that you see in the window is the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign banner, and this is the leadership. So I'm going to go ahead and explain why things were done the way they are and how it's going to work. That way you can be on top of things in the campaign. Now, first off, this is World Anvil. World Anvil is hyperlinked to 2,000 articles, maps, characters, and locations. Not only does it make a great source for session reports, but you can give some of these articles to your players as a reference too, and that way they can keep them informed in this complicated campaign, because there's so much going on. You can't expect players to remember everything, and this is great to help them. So this article right here is, so basically the article starts off is, the Temple of Elemental Evil is festering hive of intrigue and power struggles, competing factions under the control of dark forces. It's obvious. So at the heart of this organization and powerful leaders and ambition, they're paying lip service to a greater cause. The temple leadership structure is a complex web of deception, ambition, dark faith, loyalties between Zuggtmoy, the demon queen of fungi, and Uis, the old one, and Loth, the Spider Queen. So those three things are happening, and that's the ultimate goal of this campaign. The motivation of this leadership organization is to restore the temple to its former glory, unleash elemental chaos on the world, the Flaness. Uis wants to expand his influence with Thirandi and Veluna using the temple as a foothold. Zuggtmoy seeks her release from imprisonment since the first fall of the Temple of Elemental Evil, and wants to maintain control over the elemental factions here. Loth wants to infiltrate and ultimately subvert the temple to her own purposes, and the internal struggles between the different factions to gain dominance. Most of these people are chaotic evil, so they're constantly fighting among each other, trying to see who the top dog is. The first section is the Greater Temple. The Greater Temple leadership, you have the supreme command of the temple rest in the hands of a few individuals. They manipulate the lesser elemental factions, like the fire, air, water, and earth, to maintain their rule. While the elemental cults remain devoted to the cult of the elemental god, the cult of the elder elemental god has its own article. This is an organizational article. If you rest your cursor over a link, it'll do a quick pop-up. If you click on it, it'll bring up the full article with a lot more artwork and more information. But basically, I created a organizational article for the cult itself. There's another article for the elder elemental god himself, and another article for the temple. I have articles for everything. That way you can link them all together. So there's only a select few within a greater temple that are privy to the truth. The temple ultimately serves Zuggtmoy, and high-ranking individuals like Hadrich, Barkanar, Senshok, and Commander Degum orchestrate the cult's efforts without revealing Zuggtmoy's influence. Now, I want you to comment on this stuff that I'm doing, because I have, now that's what my Patreon's for and my Discord channel is for. The Three Orcs Patreon is if you want to support this project, you can go there for free and still get all the maps, pictures, and articles because of the fan content policy. But I also throw extras in there, like higher resolution maps and things like that for members. Also, if you want to support the project to help me, encourage me to make more articles. But also, we have the Three Orcs Discord, where we talk about this every day. I work on this. This is my full-time job. Well, 4 hours a day at least. And I work on this while I'm on Discord, constantly asking the members there, what do you think about this or that? What about this picture? What about this article? I want your approval. And you guys can you scan it for me and see if there's anything wrong or not clear? And also some members are actually creating articles themselves. We got some dungeon masters making different towns in different areas. I had great help with Celine. I have somebody else making Reinhurst, somebody in Divers. So I'm always looking for more people to create more stuff to put this whole thing together on the website so everybody can use it. And I'd like to get some help on the Wild Coast. So anybody out there, I got the basics of the Wild Coast already on World Anvil, but we need to fill that in more. Maybe we can get some of the triads from Wild Coast on there. So this main article, it pulls it all together, so that way it helps the Dungeon Master clarify what's really going on at the top level. Every one of these characters have their own sub-articles with their own personality, politics, background, motivation, artwork, all that. Dialogue, too. I like to create dialogue. It helps the Dungeon Master like flavor text. They're trying to orchestrate the cult's efforts without revealing Zuggtmoy's influence. They're trying to make everybody believe it's the Elder Elemental God. Nobody outside the Greater Temple would know that it's Zuggtmoy that's pulling the ultimate strings here. So we have the Supreme Commander, Hadrich. He's the mouth of Uis. He's the one in total control of this entire organization here. He is the absolute ruler of the temple under Uis' orders. He ensures Uis' influence grows while balancing Zuggtmoy's presence. That's a tricky thing. He's ruthless, manipulative, and fanatically devoted to Uis. And his rivals are Senshok, seeks to undermine him, and Barkanar positions himself as his successor. He wants to be the next one in charge. Barkanar. Now, Barkanar is the commander of the Greater Temple troops. His role is the military leader and Hadrich's heir apparent. His goal is to position himself as the temple's next supreme commander. Personality is calculating, disciplined, ambitious. He works with Degum to secure the temple, but keeps a close eye on his rivals. This is the brief parts. If you want to look at their articles, you put your cursor over their name, and then their full article will pop up. As you can see, as I scroll down, there's a lot here, including his people that he supports, his political relationships and forces. Okay, so Senshak, he's the Lord Wizard of the Temple. He's the arcane advisor and intelligence overseer. He wants to seize power from Hadrich and reshape the temple into his vision. His relationships, he feigns loyalty to Hadrich while working with Falrinth in secret. Degum, the master of security and discipline, he's the head of security and counterintelligence. He maintains order, he roots out threats within and outside the temple. So a lot of these characters that work outside the temple actually work with this person right here, directly. Falrinth, he's the keeper of the Orb of Golden Death. He has the orb, the key to unlocking the prison. He's the scholar of forbidden lore and artifact guardian. He wants to unlock the orb's secrets and serve his drow patron. He is a secret worshipper of Uis. He's paranoid, obsessive, secretive. His relationship is romantically linked to Sigma Red Hand, but he secretly pursues his own agenda. Now, Sigma Red Hand is the commander of the outer defenses. She's an assassin, defender of the temple's surface operations, and her goal is to protect the temple while expanding her influence through espionage. She's ruthless and manipulative as well. Her relationship is loyal to Falrinth, but wary of Hadrich and Senshak. Falrinth and her are actually lovers, and you'll learn that if you read their articles. Okay, now for the Supreme Commander and the strategic goals. Now, Hadrich, the High Priest of the Greater Temple, commands all operations with the Temple of Elemental Evil. If you're questioning why the Supreme Leader is in charge of the Temple of Elemental Evil, you'd really have to read the other article about the history of the Temple of Elemental Evil. Then you'd understand why. Uis got together with Loth to mastermind this whole thing, with Zuggtmoy imprisoned. And they're the ones responsible for this rise of the Temple of Elemental Evil. But this wouldn't happen if it wasn't for them. Just to let you know right up front why this is the way it is. He publicly proclaims allegiance to the Elder Elemental God. So, as do the lesser elemental cults. His true loyalties lie with Uis, the Old One, who placed him in this position to further his own dark schemes. Hadrich's grand strategy is to prepare the temple as a staging ground for a devastating invasion of Thirandi and Veluna, while secretly pursuing ways to establish a direct connection between the temple and Doraka, Uis' capital city. So that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to create a portal. That way he can funnel forces. But that's more later in his article. So to do this, Hadrich must walk a fine line, maintaining the illusion that he serves the cult of the Elder Elemental God while manipulating its cultists to advance Uis' goals. He enforces a delicate balance of power with the four elemental temples, earth, air, fire, and water, ensuring their rivalry keeps them too distracted to unite against his leadership. That's the key. You'll learn much more about him if you read his article, but I did include these internal challenges from that article. Uis' expectations. Uis demands tangible results. Territory, wealth, and eventual release of Zuggtmoy, the imprisoned demoness. However, Hadrich must keep the elemental cults oblivious to her existence. He must maintain their belief in the Elder Elemental God. Power-hungry lieutenants, Bakanor, Senshak, and Degum, Hadrich's chief lieutenants, each harbored their own ambitions and agendas. Hadrich must continue to play them against each other to maintain control. Elemental rivalries. Earth, air, fire, water temples, they vie for dominance. They believe that they alone serve the Elder Elemental God's true will. While their infighting keeps them distracted, it also weakens the temple's overall unity and slows progress towards larger goals. This gives players some time. Rumors are bound that spies from Loth and the presence of agents such as Lareth the Beautiful threatens to divide the loyalties further. There's more about that later. External threats. The forces of good, particularly from Vervabank and Veluna, have begun to take notice of increased bandit activity and elemental disturbances. Hadrich must ensure that these forces are misdirected or destroyed before they interfere. Now, increased activity, obviously you know all about that because that's the whole thing with the village of Hamlet, Varus bandits, and they're the cause of the player's investigation. Also, other organizations out there that are raiding as well into the Viscounty. You got the Blackthorn Orcs, the Giants from the Lortwell Mountains, Knoll King, and bandit groups, and pirates on the rivers. There's a lot of chaos going on out there, and the Viscounty's got its hands full. The Gnarly Forest has its hand full, and also on top of all that, Selene has closed its borders. Queen Yolanda wants nothing to do with any of this. She closed her borders. Nobody's allowed in or out. If you want to get in for whatever reason, you have to go to Caer Ostwerk on the border and submit a petition, and it usually takes months to get a response. But you'll learn all about that by reading the Ostwerk articles. Farther down, the 4 elemental temples and their leaders. So, the cult of the elemental god is earth, air, fire, water, and they're devoted to the elder elemental god. That's what they believe. They believe their power stems from boundless elemental chaos. Each faction believes their element is supreme. Through their rituals, they will eventually awaken this dark entity to reshape the world in their image. Now, about the powers they get, Zuggtmoy is secretly imprisoned here. They're getting their powers from the Elder Elemental God because he's on the 5th level. So they're tapping into his powers to get their spells. Just to confirm, Zuggtmoy isn't giving them their spells. It's the Elder Elemental God. But Zuggtmoy is using this location for her own benefit. She's trying to take control of the Elder. She's trying to take control of the elemental nodes. The first one is the Cult of the Black Earth. See how it says Cult of the Black Earth, the Howling Hatred, the Eternal Flame, and the Crushing Wave? These are names I picked up from the Apocalypse module from Wizards of the Coast. In 2014, they created a module. It's a Forgotten Realms version of the Temple of Elemental Evil. It's not that good of a module, but it's got really good ideas. One of the great ideas it had was it actually named the cults, and it gave them more personality, and their troops some interesting new spells as well. That's thematic with their elements, which is really cool. I like it a lot. Well, the Cult of the Black Earth is led by High Priest Ramag, and he's of the Earth Temple. He's the original character in the Temple of Elemental Evil, of course. I didn't use the characters from that module. I kept the characters from the original module as the basis of this campaign. So we're all good there. He's a calculating, methodical leader. He believes that stability and secrecy are paramount. He maintains a strong presence in Nulb and spies that views the growing influence of the Water Temple as a threat. Those two are kind of at it. So his belief, the Elder Elemental God is the foundation of existence, and through destruction and decay, new empires will rise. His goal is to weaken the lands of Luna and Fiorandi by disrupting their agriculture, causing earthquakes, and toppling strongholds. And his relationships, his feuds with Belsornig and Alarum, while secretly seeking Hadrich's favor. Now, some of the new spells from that module, the Apocalypse, are really cool because they're earth-based. If you look at his article, you'll see that he has those spells. So it's pretty neat, like little mini earthquakes and things like that. And of course, if you put your cursor over his name, everything you want to know about Romag is here, including all his relationships, activities, and dialogue. Everything you need to know about him is all here in this article, which is really cool. But this is not what this video is about. So the next one is the Cult of the Howling Hatred. High Priest Kelno of the Air Temple. He's arrogant and fanatical. He sees himself as the true voice of the elemental evil. He actively undermines the fire and water temples through sabotage and intrigue. He believes that the Elder Elemental God manifests as an invisible storm, bringing whispers of chaos and power to sweep away civilization. His goal is to controlling the skies, manipulating weather, summoning devastating winds, and eroding their enemies' morale. Now, about the cults. The Howling Hatred has a base in the Cron Hills. I picked up that idea from that Apocalypse module, which is basically a tower in the hills, and they're all riding giant vultures. It's pretty cool. It's got a map and everything. I went ahead and I added that to my campaign. So if the players want to take out that outpost for the Air Temple, they can go there and deal with that. That temple's raiding too. It's possible one of the raids the players could come across, or the results of that raid, would be aerial raid from giant vultures attacking a merchant caravan, because they need supplies too. Also, the Black Earth, they have a old monastery in the Cron Hills, which is just west of Hamlet, about 10 miles away. There's an old stone monastery embedded in the side of the Cron Hills. And it's a really cool place with a map and everything too. So that way, that outpost is launching their own raids as well. So it's possibly raided by Earth Temple cultists. And I have artwork for that too. The next cult is the cult of the Eternal Flame, the Fire Temple, Alrem of the Fire Temple. He's aggressive, ambitious. He forged alliances with powerful creatures like fire giants, seeks to spread destruction beyond the temple's borders. He believes the elder elemental god is fire incarnate, consuming all in its path and purging the weak. His goal is to spread destruction through arson, terrorist tactics, and fire-wielding warriors. They seek to burn away the old world to make way for the new. And he does hold deep grudge against Romag and Kelno, seeks Belsornig's destruction. They're pretty much at war with each other. What the Fire Temple's doing is what they did in the Apocalypse. They have another outpost, like the Moe House, but this one's a tower. And the tower is on top of the Edders. The Edders is that small little mountain range just north of Hamlet on the map. And it's right there on the top. They're holding this Wicker Festival for the Druids, pretending to be a great Druid leader, bringing balance back to the forest. They're going to create this, and they announced a date. So all these Druids curious about this new balance to the forest are coming to participate in this event. And it's really cool. The ultimate goal behind all this is really bad. It's some sort of wicker giant made of flame. It's pretty cool. So the next one is the Cult of the Crushing Wave. Belsornig, he's the most cunning of the four. He's also probably the biggest. Belsornig operates with an extensive spy network in Nulb and beyond. His long-term goal is to become the dominant force of the temple, even if it means betraying the Elder Elemental God. He believes the Elder Elemental God resides deep within the endless sea, waiting to drown the world in an eternal deluge. His goal is to flood the land, sabotage trade routes, infiltrate coastal cities with spies and saboteurs. He seeks to manipulate Kelno of the Air Temple and eliminate Alrarem of the Fire Temple, while keeping Rolmag at bay, the Earth Temple. If the players are really unlucky, or the Dungeon Master feels like having a little bit of fun, it's possible for the players to be raided by two of these factions at the same time. Maybe they'll interfere with each other. Maybe the air raid from above on vultures will be coming down just as the Earth cultists are attacking with their Earth monks from the forest. That'd be kind of cool. So basically, the Crushing Wave, they have a river fort just north of Nulb along the Imridge Run, right on the southern tip of the Fens of Tor. And it's a really cool picture of this fort. It's a really fun map. That's where they hold up. They're kind of like a den of pirates, and they worship water. They focus more on water activities and raiding. So you're not going to come across any kind of water temple raiders on the long road through the Viscounty. It's pretty much going to be on the rivers. Okay, so now the next section is Uwaz's influence. Now Uwaz, he's a demigod of deceit and domination, and he uses the temple as a tool for his larger conquest of the Flanness. Responsible for outside activities is Sigmol Redhand and Falrinth. Now, they're the lovers. Now Sigmol is a half-orc, and she is a commander of the temple's surface-level defenses. Her lover, Wizard Falrinth, serves as the first line of defense against would-be intruders. Sigmol is an experienced warrior who regularly sends out raiding parties and keeps the forces of Hamlet and Verpabunk occupied. Falrinth, meanwhile, uses his arcane talents. He's a high-level wizard, by the way, and Quasit Familiar to spy on the temple's enemies and its leadership. Not only does that include the temple, but also Nulb and the surrounding area. So it's really hard for players to get around in this campaign without being noticed. I noticed a lot of Dungeon Masters kind of overlook that and turn this into a board game where you go room to rooms to slaughtering creatures and looting them until you finally get to the last bad guy and kill him. It's a pretty flat campaign. It's really, I had an article and another YouTube video that I made last week about how to survive the Temple of Elemental Evil. And the answer, I had a quiz on my Patreon. Whoever answered it first gets a free module. And sure enough, after about a week, somebody finally gave the correct answer. And that correct answer is Anonymity is the most effective protection for a player group against the leaders of the Temple of Elemental Evil, because it denies the Temple's powerful leadership the critical knowledge it needs to act against the party. If the powerful 14th level wizard doesn't know you exist, he can't do anything about you. If he knows who you are and where you're at, like are hanging out at the village of Hamlet into the Welcome Wench buying drinks for everybody because you just murdered Lareth, you could easily summon some demons and send them there just to kill you. Or after you leave Hamlet, you probably do it then on the road. But they all have the powers and the capabilities of tracking you down and watching you. And Falrith is one of those good examples with this imp. So back to the article here. Current activities and power struggles. The Greater Temple is engaged in several major activities, expanding their influence. Military expansion, spying and espionage. I spell this out, what they're doing with these characters. The elemental node manipulation with the Orb of the Golden Death. Outpost, like the Moat House, the Hunting Cabin, and the Broken Tower. The Broken Tower you know about, it's in the module. It's that tower topside where all the bandits are. That's where Smigmol is. There's a hunting cabin off map. You know that secret tunnel leaving the Temple of Elemental Evil? It's more than that. It's also a supply tunnel. That tunnel leads to this decayed, dilapidated hunting cabin hundreds of yards away, deep in the forest. And behind that cabin, in the shrubbery, hidden in the hillside, is the opening to that tunnel. This is where all the supplies and slaves go. They come to this cabin, and there's Knowles here serving one of the agents of the Temple of Elemental Evil with his Knowles, and he actually controls access to that tunnel. He makes sure the supplies come in and out of that tunnel secretively, away from the world's prying eyes. And players could come across this and find out some secrets about the going-ons of the Temple's rise. So in conclusion, the Temple of Elemental Evil remains a chaotic yet formidable force driven by the ambitions of its leaders and its dark will of Uis and Zuggtmoy to internal strife, both weakness and a source of resilience, allowing cunning individuals to rise through treachery and ambition. And I see the players taking advantage of that if they play smart. This wraps up the article to the leaders of the Temple of Elemental Evil. So what do you think? Do you think this is a good track to run this campaign with the leaders, with the Elder Elemental God on the 5th level? How is your campaign different from this? I know that over the years, a lot of Dungeon Masters have made their own version of the Temple of Elemental Evil, but this is the one that I went with based on so-called Greyhawk experts over the last couple of decades, of all the research and investigation and discussions of Gygax to come to this point. And that's what I'm using. That's what I'm going with. So let me know what you think. And if you want to come to the Discord channel and talk to us there and actually work and help shape this campaign and actually add to it and collaborate, please, you're more than welcome to join.
Did you enjoy video? Consider tossing support on my Patreon. It's best way to support orcs. If you would like to see more content, subscribe and post comments below. It better not be bad.
Thank you for joining. I'm bringing traditional Dungeons & Dragons back to life, one story at a time. Happy adventuring, and may your dice ever roll true.